Finding fish is one of the hardest portions of catching fish. One thing you have to realize, there's vast areas of the lake where there's absolutely zero fish. So it's important for you to spend the time to ultimately find the fish.
Welcome to AnglingBuzz. In this episode, we're going to be focusing on the keys to finding fish. Now, anytime you're out on the water, fish, they're on the move. Apart from the spawn, their movement is dictated by forage. And depending on what you're targeting, we can look at the bottom of the food chain, zooplankton, phytoplankton, and then smaller minnows like perch, cisco, shiners, up to bluegills and even bug hatches, and also crayfish. You find that and you'll find the bigger predators. Most fish, they're opportunistic feeders focusing on what's the most abundant food source that's around them at any given time. Now, this can change throughout the season. For example, in the springtime, shiners spawn up shallow. This happens after the walleye spawn. So as the walleyes are recovering, they're kind of roaming these sand and gravel flats looking for shiners. When the mayfly hatch starts, generally that will pull walleye out to these deeper soft bottom areas, and the walleyes, they're going to be feeding on the bug hatch. Muskies, when they're done spawning, they can roam out to deep water basins searching for suspended ciscos. The bluegill spawn happens after the largemouth bass spawn, when the water warms up a little bit more, so the bass, they're recovering from their spawn, feeding on bluegill. And then as the deep weed lines start to develop throughout the upper Midwest, bluegills can move out there, and there's a large population of bass that will follow them. Bottom line, you find the forage and you'll find bigger fish. Today's guest is James Lindner. James, I know you fish for a variety of different species all over North America. What's your process of finding fish?
Well, that's an interesting question in the fact that over the course of a year, we fish on a lot of different lakes, rivers, and reservoirs in the United States and into Canada. The interesting thing is many of these lakes we've never been on. One thing that I would share with you that's really key for you as an angler to find fish really quickly is to do a lot of map study. In this particular hummingbird helix, I actually have a Lake Master chip. It has a high resolution chip in there, and I can manipulate and actually change the map to identify specific areas of the lake that are seasonally appropriate. Right now, it's late May, early June. I actually have this depth highlight set up a very, very specific way, focusing on the fish and the depth of water the fish should be in at this time of the year. I actually have my shallow water highlight, which is 0 to 5 foot, and then I have from 5 foot to 12 foot is bright green. The majority of fish in this lake at this time of the year are probably on these giant, big, shallow water flats. It's just the way it is. And what I can do is I can zoom in on the map and identify really critical spots that I think should attract fish. This hole up inside here is a really key spot. You got an inside corner right here, and actually go in there and make a waypoint. But the key is to spend the time prior to going out casting. Everybody wants to catch fish right away, but the biggest thing is figuring out and finding fish. It's really key for you as an angler to utilize your electronics to its maximum potential. Realistically, we're going to jump forward another month. I'm going to change my map, my depth highlight for that situation. I'm fishing for deep water walleyes. The walleyes right now are in anywhere between 15 to as deep as 25 foot of water. I'm going to, again, adjust my depth highlight. So what that enables you to do, when you look at the map, it's going to make you more focused on those critical areas where the fish are at this time.
Okay, after you've located an area, maybe lay down some waypoints. What's next?
Once I've identified some spots that I think should be holding fish, what we'll do is actually drive out to those areas, and I have two different sonars that I'm using a real lot of. Number one is 2D sonar, and I'm going to drive around looking for bait fish, weeds, rocks, or predatory fish, walleyes, bass, whatever I'm looking for. And number two, I'm going to actually have my side imagery on a lot also. And what that helps me do is identify specific edges. Then once we start identifying an area that actually has some amount of life in it, whether it be plankton, bait fish, and predatory fish, then you'll go in there and we'll sort of break that spot down. You identify the tips of the points, deeper inside corner where weeds come in. a transition from the weeds to the rocks, larger isolated boulders, and we'll just drop waypoints. So once I ultimately put the depth finder down and start fishing around that area, I'm casting to the best areas that would be most apt where fish would position. Oh, now you're talking, big boy.
That's what we're looking for.
One thing you have to realize, at any one given point in time, there's vast areas of the lake where there's absolutely zero fish. So it's important for you to spend the time to ultimately find the fish. Finding fish is one of the hardest portions of catching fish.
Thanks, James. That's a ton of great information for finding and locating fish. In this next segment, we're heading up to Leech Lake with Toby Kvalevog of Leisure Outdoor Adventures. He guides up there, and a few weeks ago, Minnesota Walleye Opener was happening, and there was a great shallow water bite going on. Toby, what are some things that anglers should be thinking about right now?
Yeah, Troy, you're right. With the shallow waters of Leech Lake, the walleyes typically stay in the shallows for much of the first month of the season. From fishing opener, well, the spawn, of course, and then this year, early ice out spawn got done several weeks before fishing opener. And the walleyes don't just blow out into deeper water right away. They stay up shallow, and they key in on the key forage, which is the perch, and it's your shiner minnows. And the shiners are up there spawning on the sand and sandgrass flats in 6 to 12 feet of water. They'll be there, they'll stay there for the first month, pretty much until the mayflies are hatching or done hatching, when they switch forage bases and start to move out to deeper water.
In factoring in the wind, some anglers might not think about that, but that's a really important thing, especially up on Leech Lake. I've been there, shallow water, winds blowing into a point, and the walleye are all over. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're right, Troy. You know, Leech is definitely a wind-driven lake. Anytime you have prevailing winds for several days in a row, it's going to blow that plankton, that zooplankton up into certain shorelines, and it's going to be in the bottom, and you know, it's turbulence turning around there, and that whole food chain starts. The bait fish show up to eat on the zooplankton, and pretty much the predators show up right behind. So the walleyes will key in on the wind-blown shorelines in clear water lakes. So you definitely want to focus on the wind. And even when the wind stops, when it's calm and flat and sunny, the fish just don't leave right away. Things settle down, and eventually they find a different grocery store, but it takes a while. So check the wind forecast, know where it's been, know where it's going to be, and base your fishing decisions based off of that.
Okay. And what are some of your main presentations for Leech Lake at this time?
That's a good question. You know, with wind, one of the best tactics is jigs. Jigs and more jigs. And jigs being casted, monofilament line, heavier jigs with plastics on braided line, jigs under bobbers. I prefer bobbers with jigs when it's windy, when you have waves. Just keeps the bait in a more steady, presentable fashion. So jigs, jigs, and jigs. Plastics are awesome presentation. It's fun. You can rip them, you can be more aggressive. Just jigging a minnow, jigging a leech, jigging a crawler, monofilament line. When it's maybe less aggressive presentation, dragging it through the bottom, and maybe just a light pull, snap jig.
Whoa.
But a lot of fun can be had. And of course, jigging wraps. Jigging rappalas are a great presentation. Maybe not as a guide. I don't have a lot of people casting them. Just a little bit dangerous with all those sharp hooks that Rapala has. But jigging. Find that wind, find the fish, use your side imaging, and start your jigging presentation.
Thank you, Toby, for your time and sharing some insight into early season walleyes up on Leech Lake.
This week we're featuring the Swift UPF Sun Hoodie in our Blackfish giveaways. Now the Sun Hoodie is awesome. It's got a super soft, stretchy fabric. It's gonna keep you cool in the warmest conditions, and it wicks away moisture. And no matter how many times you wash it, it doesn't lose its cooling properties. Now you can win this hoodie if you head to AnglingBuzz.com and click on our giveaways, or you can scan the QR code below.
And now it's time for our cool products. We're going to start out with the Rage jacket and bibs from Blackfish Gear. Now, the weather in the upper Midwest can be unpredictable. This is a very comfortable top and bottom. This is 100% waterproof. Also, the event technology means it's also comfortable and breathable. The hood on the jacket is vented, so that will keep it from popping up and off when you're driving across the lake. The jacket and bibs also feature this waterproof seam and zipper. The bibs feature a waist strap as well as these comfortable no-slip grip on the shoulder straps. They're available in a variety of different colors as well as different sizes. The Rage jacket and bibs from Blackfish. Next, from Offshore Tackle, they are the leader when it comes to planer boards. They have a variety of different planer boards, size 12, size 37. These feature high quality components. The line clips are very easy to use. You have the tattle flags. And planer boards, they're important when you're spreading multiple lines out, depending on your state's regulations, of course. The SST Pro Mag planer is great if you're pulling big weights and big lures for lake trout, salmon, or muskie. And the size 12, that's kind of a great all-around size, especially for walleye if you're pulling crankbaits. Be sure to check out Offshore Tackle for all their different planer boards and accessories. And next, from Daiwa, the Saltus Line Counter Reel. This is a fantastic reel. You can see this big EVA power handle for cranking in big fish. This has a very strong drag system, and this is great if you're fishing in the Great Lakes for big fish, say like king salmon or big lake trout. Now, the Saltus, you may say, is that a saltwater reel? Well, yes, but it's also perfect for big game fish in freshwater, and especially for trolling the line counter, so you can replicate how far out your line is every single time, so you can replicate those bites when you're dialing in the depth and distance. There's a clicker on the side. These feature a free spool option. The Saltus series from Daiwa. And lastly, we want to mention one of our partners, Atwater GM. They offer a wide variety of both new and used vehicles. They're a full-service dealership with great customer service, whether you need repairs or maintenance. They can walk you through step-by-step with your new vehicle, and you can visit their website for ongoing offers and specials, Atwater GM. And now it's time for our Technique of the Week.
You know, a lot of walleye anglers use jigs when walleye fishing, and the jig is undoubtedly the #1 walleye bait ever created. And traditionally, it's fished on the bottom, right? Either slow hopping it along the bottom or dragging it. And that's a great way to use it, especially early season. But the reality is, intermittently throughout the year, walleyes and all other fish alike feed on suspended bait fish and bug life that's suspended mid-column. And that's when swimming jigs can come into play. When we're talking plastics, you know, today's anglers, whether you're fishing walleye tournaments, bass tournaments, they're all using similar stuff. And what it is, it's minnow profile baits, right? You're trying to mimic whether it's shiners, ciscos, shad, right? Some type of suspended bait fish. And here I've got a couple great options. Eye candy paddle shad, Big Bites Bait suicide shad. We've got the Crush Shitty Mayor, right? And all these different plastics mimic the bait fish that are gonna be suspended. Whether you're fishing for walleye or bass, they're gonna work for both, right? But you pair it with the right size jig head and you're gonna catch a ton of fish. And I'm gonna kind of run through a few different ways we use swim jigs depending on depth. And the first is jig trolling. And now traditionally we're doing this between 15 and 30 feet of water. And what it is it's a 1/2 ounce moon eye jig paired with a Big Bite suicide shad. And what you're doing is you're dropping this down to the bottom. And I'll let it hit the bottom and then I'll reel up to maybe 4 or 5 feet off the bottom. And then we're gonna get on the trolling motor and slowly putt around at like 0.5 to 0.8. And you're not putting a lot of action in this. What you're doing is you're getting this up high above the fish and that tail's just wagging real slow. What it does is it mimics small bait fish like ciscos and the walleyes just key in and crush it. And the real key though is not moving it, right? Just let the plastic create the action, slowly putt around over deep water structure, and it's a great way to catch particularly fish that are feeding on suspended bait fish out deep. Now when we look at swimming jigs in shallow water situations, that's when I like to go the total opposite end, super light, right? Either a 1/8, sometimes even a 1/16 ounce. And how you're working this is you're casting it out over weed beds, rock piles, you know, just shallow water structure that fish are using. Say you're fishing a weed bed, you're gonna work it up above the weeds, and what's gonna happen is those walleyes sit down in the weeds and they're looking up and they're feeding on whatever's swimming up there, whether it's perch, shiners, you know, even ciscos can be in shallow, bluegills, right? So you're gonna cast it out, work it, slowly swim it back above the tops of the weeds, and you can use hair jigs, you can use swim baits, you can use minnow profile baits, but the key is to keep it up because those fish are not feeding on the bottom. You know, and the reality is this works for all types of species, walleye, pike, bass, and muskie, and even panfish too. And the unique thing with advancements of forward-facing sonar, we're seeing a lot of tournaments won, whether it's bass tournaments and walleye tournaments, they're winning it the same way. They're swimming jigs mid-column, they're headhunting fish with forward-facing sonar, and they're catching big ones. So if you're out on the water and you're seeing a lot of bait fish suspended up high, start swimming jigs, you don't want to overlook it, and I promise you're gonna catch a lot of fish.
Swim jigging, that can really be effective for so many different kinds of fish, and it can be as simple as just casting and reeling. And we want to help stop the spread of aquatic invasive species anytime you're leaving any body of water. Remember, clean, drain, dry. And be sure to visit our website. We have some awesome ongoing sweepstakes there. You can also get more in-depth videos, blogs, and fishing reports there too. And also be sure to follow us across our social medias, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Simply, it's AnglingBuzz. Thank you for joining us.
This week's Buzz Bite Report.
Tony Roach,
Bray Rollstone,
Lee Talkin here.
Brad Durick up here on the Red River.
Muskegon River.
Leech Lake.
Devil's Lake.
Beautiful Lake Vermilion.
Black.
Topwater's been really fun.
Go to the plastics.
Bass like this.
A lot of walleyes like that.
Giant bluegills.
Fresh report from Lake of the Woods.
Grand Traverse Bay.
Alexandria, Minnesota. Get out, get fishing,
Have fun.
rock and roll, take care.